Welcome back to Nerdin Out with Cold Bore, where we break down data, tech, and everything shaking up the energy industry. Today we're kicking things off with a showdown, DeepSeek versus OpenAI. Another AI model has entered the ring, but does it bring anything new to the table? We'll dig into what makes it different and why it matters. Then we're shifting gears to Auto-Frac. What is it? How does it work? And is automation really the future of completions? We're learning as we go and breaking it all down. Let's get into it.
So DeepSeek is a Chinese large language model that they have an app that's been very popular since they came out. What shook a lot of the AI world was the claim, anyway, that they were able to train all that model for about $6 million, I think is the figure that they used. For orders of magnitude, that's like at least one order of magnitude smaller than what an equivalent large language model would spend on training. So there's a couple of things that they claim. So first they said they use H800s a GPU, so that those are the NVIDIA's one. I think they also say that they can use the AMD's. Oh, fucking, I don't remember the...
whatever that is.
Can we swear on this podcast?
We're only allowed 2 swears, otherwise we've got to go down a PG rating.
Okay. So one down. So that's one thing. So that the GPUs, essentially the graphics card, if you will, that they use are much cheaper to get. So yeah, we have it on the article here. It's like 6 million versus over 100 million. So yeah. Quite a bit smaller.
And A100s.
No, they do A100s and H800s, and I think the new H100s are the expensive NVIDIA ones that are used at OpenAI and all these American AI companies. The other thing that they use, they call it mixture of experts. So essentially, think about the way that OpenAI runs their model. Is kind of like really brute force, where you're kind of training everything, and then all the parameters gets kind of involved into all the training phases. Well, mixture of expert is basically it's like a heuristics of trying to get a little smarter, where you have kind of clusters of information, and if something is not relevant, obviously, to another cluster of information, it's not going to pull that data into the training. So that's a really rough kind of understanding of or my understanding anyway of what that means. So basically what that means is you can kind of cluster around when you're training or certain things. You can only go and pick certain things that you obviously will be relevant to what you're training against at the moment. So that saves a lot of computation. Essentially, it's instead of brute forcing any So don't quote me on what I just said, but essentially what I understand is that you save a lot of computation because you put some heuristics in place during the training that will guide you to pick certain pieces of data that you're going to use rather than using the whole data set.
Yeah, that'll
kind of
identify
consistently.
relevance versus irrelevance.
Exactly. And the other thing that they claim is that they said they have a more creative way to train the model, and maybe I'll let Derek speak to some of the rumors about how creative they are.
Controversy around the training of DeepSeek?
Yeah, I saw this rumor that they just prompt OpenAI and then take the prompts and the results from that, and they're training off that. And they use apparently OpenAI. I think I saw a thing saying OpenAI confirmed that they used a large amount of tokens or whatever. They're big batch.
Probably 80%
pricing.
of their revenue for training the model was OpenAI tokens.
Yeah, probably.
How do you prevent that? How does that not break your business model if someone can you spend $100 million training a model and then someone can just read from it and replicate basically the same thing for $6 million. So it's kind of sounds like a race to the bottom to me. I mean,
well, in that sense, right? If that's true, then DeepSeek is directly dependent on OpenAI. So any innovations or further development, they're like we basically can't do anything. We just wait till ChatGPT is done, and then we just go off theirs and recreate it. So all OpenAI has to do is say, okay, we don't let you batch pull 100,000 prompts out of us anymore.
Yeah, but doesn't that get hard? Like as AI becomes more and more prevalent, how easy is it going to be to differentiate between someone that are just probing to recreate let's say a wrapper model, if you will, versus like an actual heavy user? You know, you think about all those chatbots that people are creating. Like you think, you got Salesforce, let's say, that gets in bed with you at OpenAI, and now they're blasting like the OpenAI model like days in and days out. Like, so how you tell the
that's
difference.
True. I mean, there'd be controls, right? It depends on how much of a breaking thing is this, right? Like as they innovate, right? I think the new thing they're talking about isn't large language models. Now they're talking about like there's reasoning models that are better.
Well,
right?
that's another thing that DeepSeek claims to be as well, right? It's also a reasoning model. I think like the other one I'll call them like deep research, or I think that's the OpenAI one called deep research. Deep search is the Rock one.
Yeah.
I know they use reinforcement learning through this. I mean, it's such a volatile place right now, like to try to keep track of. But yeah, that's one of their thing too. Is the reasoning model. I haven't really tried it much, honestly, because we all know the reasoning model's problem with OpenAI's model when you're like, asking it stuff like how many Y's in strawberry, or and it just makes it up, and you ask math problem and it just blows at that.
That's where an LLM can't do this. But that's the idea. A reasoning model can. So I guess to my point is that we're seeing these innovations. I'm not like super deep in this, but if it depends, like you're saying, like if DeepSeek breaks the business model, if that trend continued where it goes through the reasoning model and whatever new innovations, like that trend still exists. Like you could always train a almost comparable model just off the results of this other guy's model. Then I think the business, I don't think it breaks the business, but it changes how the business dynamics can work. Because any big users, you're like, we're not just going to open this up. Like I'm going to whitelist your IP. Like I don't open up my prompts to anybody.
Well, it
like
just
as
becomes,
large amounts, right?
It becomes commoditized. Like it reminds me a little bit of like this. It's the same problem that music had in the 2000s, where it's like, it's just easy to get, like for very cheap prices.
I do find this ironic, though.
And then you just copy it over. It's the problem with any digital product, is that you can just replicate them because it's just bits and
to an extent, right? But we're still talking like it cost ChatGPT, it cost them hundreds of millions of dollars to create this, and DeepSeek $6 million.
Yeah,
like it's still like it's a lot lower barrier to entry, but it's not like breaking, right? It's not like anybody can do this. It's like, hey, you need a couple million, right? So it's like all OpenAI has to do, and all any other competitors is just like, I'm just not going to open the gates to anybody that knocks on the door.
But I don't really understand how that's possible. Like, how can you train a model that's like so smart by just prompting another model? I mean, you need the raw data at some point in order to create your
to reverse engineer that. I would like to draw a parallel, though, between companies like Walmart and people facing Chinese product through Amazon. This is actually the opposite of that, where instead of it's America's Amazon, it's China's DeepSeek Amazon facing ChatGPT to the world.
Yeah, so basically they're just drop shipping AI.
That's right.
That's the title of the podcast.
Drop shipping AI.
We have a quote up on the screen. It suggests a potential loophole in current IP frameworks where AI models can effectively learn from each other without legal recourse.
I mean, you can scratch that and go like one step further, where there's a lot of criticism of OpenAI themselves using data that we're not even sure they're supposed to have the right to use.
Yeah, we have
their models.
100%.
And even with early drawing apps like Midjourney, etc., people are saying, well, I drew this, and Midjourney is taking it, changing it a little bit, and adding it to another image, and it's calling it creative art, where actually it's creative copying.
Yeah, my wife was on Temu, and she was trying to buy my son something. And I could tell that everything's AI generated now.
100%.
Because there's always
extra fingers.
No, it's even in the words. There's missing letters. Like, I don't know if you ever tried to get an LLM to like write something on a picture.
Oh yeah.
Forget about it. Like, it's gonna fuck it up. Number 2. Every single time.
That's pretty early.
Every single time. Like, it's like you can tell it like, hey, like you missed an R in sorry. Like they're like they're gonna put 5 R's. Like, boom.
What are you gonna do now?
Yeah, it is difficult. I tried Midjourney for like a week, and in a week of prompting and trying to play with it and looking at how people do it, I
Pissed
got
off.
one image that I was like, "This isn't terrible."
Well, that's another thing about AI is that like there's so much hype out there. Like, I'm a programmer, right? So like I always follow other programmers, and then like they all show up with like, oh, I built this AI, I did this app with AI in 4 hours, and I'm literally like coding in some of my stuff, and I'm asking it like just, hey, what are the functions that are available in this library for this the functions for this class, and then it's just inventing stuff. Like it's literally making it up. It's like, well, regularly a library like that has a run function, so I'll tell them there's a run function, and then you're like you do run, and then like it just doesn't compile, and you look at fine, I'll go in the doc, right? No run function, great,
Wicked. Thanks AI.
yeah, thanks AI, like just made it worst. Like, and now you're telling me it's gonna write a whole app for me?
No, like I mean, I saw one tool that's out there like that. I think it probably will get. It's pretty early though. Like it's not there yet.
I'm using Cursor. That's the thing that they say. Oh, like Cursor is the big thing. Like but really it's just a wrapper. It's a wrapper of another. And what's nice though is that you have in Cursor you have all the large language models, and you can kind of toggle them on and off.
Oh, so you can wrap for DeepSeek, who's wrapping OpenAI, and you're good.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you have Claude. Claude is one that's like well known for being good with coding typically.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's because they have more of a reasoning model, because like this is what programming is about, right?
Reasoning.
Because I know like a lot of people that are trying to do stuff with AI, like I mean, it gets you so far. Yeah. Like if you just say, create me an app that I don't know is an accounting app where I can enter a transaction, it's gonna do that fine. Right. Yeah. It's gonna, but it's like, as soon as you get in there and it's like, well, I want it teal, but not that teal. And then you try to fine tune stuff, then it's where it gets really.
Yeah, that was the issue with Midjourney. Like, I want
Yeah.
a dragon flying through the sky.
It
It'll
starts
do that.
pretty good, right?
Yeah, and, well, I want it to breathe fire to the left. And it's like, okay, now it's got 5 feet.
Yeah. Derek, what is AutoFrac?
Alex went to HFTC and
Elena.
yeah, and I think Halliburton was showing off this paper they're writing, looking at Auto-Frac, and they wrote this paper on improving consistency and control and completions. So yeah, what was it like? Did you see this at the HFTC? Did you have a chance to go see their thing?
I didn't attend, but I mean, we're in the business of data and completion, so obviously Auto-Frac is not something that's new to us. I mean, the paper is really interesting. Invite everyone over. Like, I think the title of the paper, so that we free advertisement. Auto-Frac, improving consistency in controlling completions.
Just like
SB
Derek read.
223511 MS. I wasn't paying attention. Thanks, Greg. So yeah, I guess nothing new for us. I guess what's really interesting in that paper is how involved, like, because a lot of times, like when we, that's something that we enable at Colbor, right? Because since we detect a lot of events on Frac, we can kind of share the event on the network, and then different systems can kind of collaborate by just ingesting those events and acting on it. In this paper, it's really kind of more of a closed system, right? With Halliburton. Can we name them?
We just did.
Okay.
Well, they did write the paper.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, that's Auto-Frac, improving consistency and controlling completions, which is SP 223511-MS.
Oh, thanks for the number.
Greg.
No problem. I got you.
So that gives them a lot of control over an experiment like that, for sure, right? Because you have the pumps, you have like everything up to the wellhead. I don't know what I didn't see a lot of thing about, like, well, because they're not talking really about wellhead automation, right? It's really about like the frac itself.
Yes.
While something that we are more involved in on our side is kind of more of the surface optimization, where it's like, moving from one well to the other, that type of stuff. Like this paper is really about like during the frac operation. What's really interesting is the sheer amount of changes, right? And Derek, maybe you can get more into the details around. I think it was what was it called? Where it was because the instruments were doing about automated control on the pump rate set points executed average per stage.
Yeah.
Sounds really high to me, but they say manual. If it's per stage, sounds really high to me. But maybe I'm wrong. It's 1,300-ish manual, and AutoFrac did 17,000.
Yeah.
On average. Do you want to talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting, and I'm not an expert in this, so I'm curious what that manual kind of refers to, because I'd imagine they're running like 18 pumps, and so they're adjusting each pump will be adjusted individually off of gears, horsepower, trying to run them optimally, as well as like if they need to swap out a pump, all these kind of factors come into play. So I imagine that 1,300, there's some already like preliminary, like automation,
somewhat
automated. So they're making set points, and that's moving, a gear or whatever setting on one of the pumps. But like looking at the wellhead rate set point, so they want a certain slurry rate. They're like, I want 30 barrels per minute, and they see the pump change or whatever, so it's creeping up, and so they're watching the pressure, and they're basically just adjusting this all the time. And so I think that's kind of like the interesting part, because that's the output, right? And part of the challenge is that the pump rate changes. So even on the slurry rate set points, they say that they got about 32 adjustments, whereas AutoFrac was at like 4.
Yeah.
So that's really what I think this paper is really trying to show, is the consistency that they can kind of bring by automating, and really what they're automating the control of the pump rates based off of what the design's coming in, and then they also control the proppant concentration. So it's looking for that treating pressure. They have some controls. They didn't explain much on how it looks for like if they have screen outs or just like removing those kind of factors. So I imagine this thing runs kind of maybe conservatively to try and stay away from screen outs. But those are kind of guesses, because they don't really dive too far into like how those controls.
How they push
do
it,
like to mention the word AI a couple times in, but say it's outside the paper, so
they're sprinkling it with AI.
Yeah, they don't give you too much juice there.
The one thing that I thought was neat is the idea of using like lane control for a car, for example. Mm-hmm. If humans driving, you look at it and you kind of do manual twitch adjustments. It's like looking at how many tangents are in a circle versus a smooth curve. If you ask the machine, keep me perfectly in between these two lanes, it'll make tens of thousands of adjustments versus your 500 or whatever it is, because it's doing slight tweaks to hit it off.
Yeah, and tweaks that are even you can't
imperceptible.
perceive.
That's right.
And when you're driving the steering wheel, you're always kind of jerking it one way or the other a little bit to keep it straight, right?
The part of the paper that I found neat was the figure 1 versus variability and execution. You see some yellow dots and some blue dots describing the difference between day shift and night shift in pressure versus depth. What this looked like was one of our, or several companies that we work with, they said, we need a plan versus actual for friction reducer versus pumping pressure, because the different day shift or night shift execute the same instructions, but they interpret it differently. So the night shift might say, well, we don't have access to really good resources. I want a smooth frac, so I'm going to use more friction reducer so we can maintain the right pressure. Whereas the day shift has a better strength or understanding of the capabilities, so they want to reduce the cost or reduce the spend on the well. So they're using less friction reducer and running it closer to the thresholds. That's really what this looks like. And when reading the paper, it feels like they're trying to say, we take that interpretation out. We just say, here's the parameters, and the computer executes the parameters as written, instead of a human being like, well, this is what they want, so I'm going to do more what they want than what I'm told.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting, right? And I guess to give a bit more for people listening in, like what we're looking at here is the difference between day shift and night shift. As a scatter plot looking at what are the pressures they're operating at certain depths, right? So we know at higher depths, our pressure is going to increase because we have that friction component coming down hole. But we're seeing like the night shift considerably lower pressures versus the day shift, right? So that kind of shows like, you think common sense wise, they're probably just running higher FR, trying to get that sound, maybe running a bit more conservative and not letting their pressures get too high. And that's where Craig's kind of talking to of like, by automating this, we remove that consistency. And actually interesting too, like going on that thought, long term, if you continue to automate and look at the consistency, I imagine that would lend itself very well to like the reservoirs engineers in looking at like our perf efficiencies and what kind of production we got out of it. Now you can actually analyze these things because you have consistent pump to design. So you have a much better understanding of like, is our design getting us what we want out of this reservoir? Whereas imagine in the past, a lot of that, like there's so much inconsistency. It's very hard to say like, okay, well, if we pump the stage well, it turned out pretty good. We got some good results, but then we have so much inconsistency. It's very hard to get that like information back. I would imagine there's a lot of improvements that can be made just from having that consistency.
And I can imagine like right now there seems to be this push towards 24-hour-a-day pumping. And so being a junior engineer, potentially seeing this and saying, actually, if I slow it down and do a few less stages per day, I can get closer to my KPI of 24-hour-a-day pumping. Actually, it goes against the instructions of the company, but they're nailing their targets to hit their whatever prize they get at the end of the pad. So removing that that interpretation layer is what this computer would be able to do, or this automated fracking.
It's a common pattern in many industries. What I haven't gathered from and maybe it's in the paper, but I kind of browsed through it. But it talks about automation and there's like my understanding that there's some parameters that the machine was trying to get to, right? There were certain threshold it was trying to get to. And I mean, that's kind of how manufacturing is the classic example, right? When you're trying to understand your quality control, well, the first thing you need to do is to have a very specific way that you build everything so that if there's an issue, then you can kind of track it back to somewhere down the line.
Yeah, everything breaks the same.
Everything breaks the same, exactly. And so, in that way, it helps that they're going in that direction, and then they can look at their performance, and then the variability of the human factor of the person running the frac now doesn't have an impact if you have something like this going, right? What I'm curious to see is the next step from that. And that's actually the harder step, is the fact that this is a very stochastic environment out there, right? The reason why they're paying guys to be out there is they bring all their experience with them so that when, there's some reaction from the rock that is not expected from the beginning of the pad or from the design or from the the information that you have before you start, that they kind of have a pattern on how to deal with it and go about it.
Yeah, they can make decisions.
Yeah, and this is where like a system like that that's nice that they can kind of automate it, put some threshold and get it to fine. And because when I see certain fine-tuned stuff, I'm thinking, okay, it's just the Tesla running down a straight road. Right. And it's like, yeah, the Tesla going down the straight road, there's wind, there's this and that. It probably has 17,000 slight adjustment in the steer.
That's right.
Right. Because those sensors are super sensitive, and same as those pumps and stuff like that. But it's really when there's a deer that comes across.
Yeah. Or did you see that video of the old man falling in front of the Tesla, and the Tesla crashed into a signpost to avoid hitting the old man?
Yeah.
That's exactly what you're saying. Yeah. Will the frac pump hit the old man? Is the question.
Exactly. And that's I think that's what's going to be the true test for a system like that, right? Because those type of decisions that you make, that's the thing that you can really quickly offset your savings that you have by having this kind of automated vanilla well. That goes well all the time versus hitting that bad few wells during the year that you're going to have to struggle through if you're making it super expensive by making drastically bad mistakes on those wells. So that's where I'm curious to see how they can implement a feedback loop in real time on this, because I mean they have to have some feedback loop in real time, obviously, to kind of guide stuff. Like they have sensors in real time, but what I mean more is like when things goes sideways, when it's an outlier, like what does it do? Does it shut down? Does it like is it because you could say, hey, like you can go back to manual mode, like it's like a Tesla, right? You can just.
They do mention you go back to manual mode. I think, not knowing the intentions of Halliburton's long term, but I think in my mind, the goal is not to remove people from the field. I think that's very challenging, or at least not like maybe you can remove one or two guys, but like you need somebody there that knows what's going on and can call the frac and identify these things. It's more making each stage consistent. So he's still doing his thing, but he's not doing those adjustments, right? You're getting that consistency. Yeah. But there's so many things, like you're saying, like screen outs, or we have a plug slip, or there's casing damage, right? Like these things that are very hard.
See, it's machine assisted, but still human driven, right? In that sense.
Like you're saying, the full self-driving Tesla, like that might be impossible in this environment, right? But the consistent, right? The lane assist. That's where I just want the lane assist. I'll still be behind the wheel, but I just want that lane assist to get that consistent stages to the ground.
And that might, and downstream, I know that, we deal with frac data all the time. And we know that having that consistency so you can evaluate your performance from pad to pad and crew to crew, like having some of that consistency is key, right? Because you're trying to, find the mix that works well, and then like you have to have a mean to replicate that for your next pad, right? So that, to me, that's what a system like that allows you, is that you can kind of set parameter that are auto driven, that is independent on whatever crew you're going to send in the field, and then and you kind of leave the kind of outliers up to that person you entrust to run that job for you.
Yeah, well, and just like a Tesla, at first everyone's holding on to it for dear life while it's controlling. Now you see videos of people sleeping behind the wheel while the Tesla's just cruising through the city. Really hard to switch over to manual mode when the manual's sleeping. Yeah. That's the same thing as potentially not human assisted frac, but full auto frac. If everybody in the data van's having a little, okay, we hit the button, let's go for our break. It's really hard to swap over to manual control at that point.
Yeah, and I think this is an extra step, though. Like, to me, we're just blurring the line between human, machine assisted human fracking and human assisted machine fracking, right? And that's the blurry line where obviously we've always had machine assisted human fracking. Like we always have screen where I have sensors, where I have some information that helps us make decision, and that's the human assistance. But now we were trying to see if we're going to go, well, that's the first foray into majority machine driven and then human assisted to the machine, right? So that's an interesting development for sure.
I think this is a good segue. I heard our meme of the day is a robot. I'm not going to say the nationality of the robot because we don't see that. Is a robot attacking crowd? Milena, could you pull up a clip?
It came from China. What do you want me to say?
I have a hard time with this one.
By security.
Oh, I know that area though. I've been there. The area is real.
Video from a festival in China shows an AI-powered humanoid robot malfunctioning and attempting to strike people in the crowd before being stopped by security.
Maybe we should have a look at the person it attacked. Maybe he had a good reason. I don't want to jump to conclusion here.
It's a racist robot. That's what it is.
No, the person's dressed up like a bear.
No, she has a mask.
Can you enhance?
I don't think it's meant to attack them.
It's not supposed to attack at all.
I could just see whoever programmed that having an absolute fear of bears, being like, if you see any bears, attack it. We're gonna be heroes.
Yeah.
I'm pretty mediocre on this clip. Can we have another one? Have you seen those? What is it? Boston Robotics?
Yeah, they have one of those. You actually made a copy of the Boston Dynamics.
Yeah, but when are we going to actually do something? I've been watching Boston Dynamics videos for 10 years now. Can it do something real useful? Or?
I have no idea.
Well, the neat part...
Nice dog.
Yeah, nice dog, man, but what now?
The cool part is a couple years ago, they had a video of Boston Robotics. It was a robot with weapons, and he was shooting targets. And Buddy hit it with a sledgehammer and knocked it over, and it recovered and continued shooting at the targets. When you look at it, of course, everyone had this huge hype. but you actually dove into the video. It was a person wearing some bodysuit of some sort, getting hit with sledgehammers while doing the shots, and then they replaced it through green screen to look like a robot. Oh, wow. It's all fake. But I think it was made as a spoof.
Am I supposed to be surprised?
I personally really like that.
Right.
That video.
Is anybody surprised by this?
Well, that's actually the problem, isn't it? That no one's surprised that they would screen, hey, here's a product. You can't actually get the reality of things. It's heavily censored.
Just a few realities.
Just a few realities. I wonder how censored GPT is, though.
You should ask it about Xi Jinping looking like Winnie the Pooh. See what it says.
Yeah, see what that says.
I'm sorry. Can we get that clip up? What? Thank you for watching our podcast. I'm Craig Bergmann. This is
Derek Mathewson
and
Alex Fortin.
Just a reminder, you can listen to our episodes through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Please drop a comment about your favorite takeaway and stay tuned for our next episode.
Data in hand, we rock the bytes and we'll take a stand. Calculators flashing like a disco ball. Cold board tech, hey, we answer the call.